Welcome to the Explainer! So, picture this. Imagine having a boss who runs his payroll so recklessly, so completely backwards to normal business practices that modern HR departments would literally have a collective meltdown. We're talking about a system that, on paper, looks like terrible accounting, but as we're going to see today, it actually completely flips our entire understanding of what it means to truly earn a living.
Okay, let's dive into this. What happens when equal pay for unequal work isn't an injustice, but is actually the ultimate act of generosity? You see, as human beings, we are completely hardwired for transactional fairness. We put in the hours, we get the pay, we do the work, we expect the reward, right? But today, we're looking at a message primarily driven by a powerful sermon from the Church of 1122, supported by some deep theological insights, and it challenges this exact wiring. We're going to decode a story that forces us to ask a tough question. Do we really want what's fair, or do we actually want grace?
Section 1. The 11th hour. So Jesus tells this truly shocking parable in Matthew 20 about a landowner hiring day laborers. Let's walk through how this workday unfolds. The master hits the local marketplace early, and at 6 a.m. he hires his first crew, agreeing to pay them a standard daily wage. Fair enough? But he doesn't stop there. He heads back to the marketplace at 9 a.m., then at noon, and again at 3 p.m., each time finding more idle hands and sending them into the vineyard. Finally, at 5 p.m., what the biblical text calls the 11th hour of a 12-hour workday, he finds even more workers just standing around and hires them too. Now, the folks at 1122 made a really profound point here. For some people, 5 p.m. is their 11th hour. They pointed out that tragedy never schedules. Some people get brought into the fold at the very last possible moment of their lives, right at the literal end of their day.
Evening finally comes, and it is time to settle up. The master instructs his foreman to pay the workers, starting with the very last ones hired, the 5 p.m. crew. And here is the absolute shocker. He hands every single one of those 11th hour workers exactly 1 denarius. That is a full day's wage for just 1 hour of work. Naturally, the guys who started at 6 a.m. are watching this go down. They're doing the math in their heads, and they are expecting a massive payday. But when they get to the front of the line, they are also handed exactly 1 denarius.
Section 2. The problem of entitlement.
This kind of bad accounting naturally offends our modern sensibilities, doesn't it? If we're totally honest with ourselves, we instantly feel the tension and the righteous anger of those 12-hour workers. I mean, they bore the scorching heat of the day. To understand their reaction, the 1122 sermon points to a toxic mindset, and this is brilliantly supplemented by commentary from the Washington Institute. Basically, the workers were poisoned by 2 things: envy and entitlement. Now, envy isn't just wanting what someone else has. It's a resentful awareness of another's advantage. It's being mad that they got a good deal. Entitlement, on the flip side, is the belief that because of my hard work, I am owed special treatment. The 12-hour workers were completely infected by both. They were resentful of the latecomer's blessing and entitled because of their own sweat.
When those 12-hour workers complain, the master doesn't apologize at all. Instead, he issues a stunning rebuke. There's this fascinating linguistic nugget found in verse 15. The master says, "Is your eye evil because I am good?" Back in the 1st century, having an evil eye was a well-known idiom for being completely consumed by envy. The master is essentially saying to them, "Hey, we had an agreement, and I kept it. Are you really going to let your own envy turn my generosity into something evil?" They were just so hyper-focused on comparing scorecards that they entirely missed the goodness of the boss.
Section 3. The Grumbling disease.
The thing is, when entitlement takes root, it never stays quiet. It breeds a really toxic response. We saw it historically with the Israelites grumbling in the wilderness, and we see it addressed heavily in the early church. In fact, the Apostle Paul uses a fascinating word in his letter to the Philippians when he tells them to do everything without complaining. The Greek word is Gongysmos. Say that out loud with me, Gongysmos. It's actually an onomatopoeic word, meaning it sounds exactly like what it means. It's that low, under-the-breath murmuring, that constant background hum of complaint and dissatisfaction. This grumbling disease fractures unity, it ruins our joy, and it completely destroys our witness to the outside world. When we are faced with a difficult or seemingly unfair world, we generally have 4 responses. First, we can isolate and just hide in our own holy huddles. Second, we can indulge and become exactly like the broken culture around us. Third, we can incinerate people with our complaints, our constant arguments, and our scorekeeping. Or fourth, we can illuminate. We're called to be luminaries, to literally shine as lights in a dark, grumbling world. And you simply cannot illuminate the darkness if you are constantly incinerating others with your Gongysmos.
Section 4. Blood-bought grace.
So how do we actually cure this grumbling disease? Well, the cure for our envy and our entitlement is realizing that the master in the story isn't unfair. Not at all. He is just radically, overwhelmingly generous, and he's operating on an entirely different economic system. To bolster this primary message of radical generosity from 1122, we can look at a profound quote by Dr. Jim Caulfield. He said, "Sacrifice will always turn into entitlement unless grace intervenes." Just really think about that for a second. Our natural human tendency is that whenever we put in those 12 hard hours, we automatically start feeling owed. We desperately need grace to intervene.
So the absolute crucial point is this. As powerfully emphasized in the 1122 sermon, everything we have is a blood-bought grace gift. God doesn't hire us because he needs our labor. He brings us into the vineyard because he loves us. Whether you've been working in the vineyard for 50 years or 50 minutes, the reward, eternal life, forgiveness, the sheer presence of God, it isn't based on your 12 hours of sweat. It's based entirely on his free, unmerited grace. Jesus paid the ultimate price so we could receive the ultimate gift.
Section 5. Becoming a door holder.
And this brilliantly illustrates a major shift. If we truly grasp this unearned grace, how should we respond? It has to actually change how we live and view the people around us. Look at the contrast between the two economies. The world's economy is built entirely on merit and fairness, which inevitably leads to grumbling when things don't go our way, and a constant, endless seeking of authority. But the kingdom's economy? It's built on grace and generosity, which produces immense joy. And instead of seeking authority, it leads to being a door holder. The 1122 sermon highlighted this incredibly beautiful idea. It is vastly better to be a joyful door holder in God's house, enthusiastically welcoming others in, than to sit on some throne of our own making, keeping score. Perhaps the greatest example of this 11th hour grace is the thief who hung on the cross right next to Jesus. The guy had absolutely no good works. He had no 12-hour shift in the vineyard. Yet Jesus promised him paradise. As the striking quote goes, when asked by the angels how he got into heaven, his only possible response could be, "The man on the middle cross said I could come." Wow, that is pure unadulterated grace. It's not about what we've done, it is entirely about what he has done.
So, we arrive at our final thought for this explainer. Are you still keeping score, or are you ready to celebrate the Master's radical generosity? Because if you are constantly comparing your life, your struggles, and your blessings to others, you're just going to end up poisoned by envy and entitlement. But if you recognize that your very presence in the vineyard is a total gift, you can drop your scorecard, stop the grumbling, and finally step into the incredible joy of grace.